You're the failure. You're just a burden we won't carry anymore.
Get out.
That's what my mother said, standing in the kitchen of the house I scrubbed, cooked in, and quietly cried inside for years. Dad didn't argue. He just looked away and slid a set of house keys across the table. Not to me. To my brother. They gave him everything. Our family business. The second house my grandfather built. And their public approval like a ribbon on top.
Me?
I got silence. No goodbye. No explanation. Just a plastic bag with my name on it, full of mail and leftovers. I left that night. Didn't scream. Didn't beg. Just left. For 2 years, I didn't call. Didn't show up at holidays. Didn't answer their polite, guilt-laced voicemails that came every few months like clockwork. Instead, I built something. Quietly. Far away.
Piece by piece.
I bought a small plot of land with the little savings they never asked if I had. Worked 2 jobs. Poured every insult they ever gave me into bricks, blueprints, and borrowed time. And then, 2 years later, my phone rang. It was my brother, number I never saved. But I knew the voice.
Panicked.
Breathless. He'd just driven past my land. Past the stone gate. Past the manicured trees. Past the new roof with solar panels and the custom glass entryway. And all I heard was him shouting into the phone.
Dad.
You need to see this place. She built a whole life without us. My name is Emery Blake, I'm 36. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. Because the ones they threw out, sometimes they don't just rise. They rise louder. After that call, I waited. Not because I wanted them to come, but because I knew they would. Curiosity always follows cruelty. Especially when the person you discarded starts glowing in a place you can't reach. 2 days later, a familiar car crawled past my fence. Dad's. He didn't park. Just slowed down enough to stare. I stood on my porch with a cup of tea, not waving, not smiling. Just existing, which, in their world, was already too much. I watched him drive off, and something in me, something I didn't know was still waiting, finally exhaled. That night, my inbox lit up.
Mom.
Subject line. We should talk. I opened it. Emery. We didn't mean for things to get so distant. We were just trying to do what was best for everyone. Your brother needed help starting out. You seemed fine on your own. Let's reconnect. Maybe we can come see the house sometime. No apology. No ownership. Just revision. They were trying to write themselves into Act 2 of a story they abandoned at Chapter 1. I didn't reply, but I forwarded the email to myself with the subject. When they pretend they didn't push you. Then I got in my truck, drove into town, and picked up paint samples. I was planning a mural. For the side wall facing the road. A message. Not in words, but in color. In defiance. In presence. Because I wasn't just living. I was seen. And no amount of memory washing could unbuild what I built from nothing. 3 weeks later, they showed up unannounced. I was planting lavender when I heard the car door slam. Dad first. Then Mom, in heels too sharp for gravel, wobbling her way up my stone path like she owned it. They didn't knock. They stood at the edge of the porch like tourists at a monument they never funded. Mom looked around, eyes scanning the wooden beams, the iron lanterns, the details they never believed I could afford. You did all this yourself? She asked, as if I had stolen the land from under someone else's name. I stood up, dirt on my gloves, and said nothing. Just let the silence stretch like wire between us. Dad finally spoke. You should have told us you were doing so well. I tilted my head. You told me I was a burden. I assumed my silence would be a relief. Mom flinched. Not from guilt. From being quoted. We were under stress, she muttered. Your brother was going through a lot. We didn't think you'd thrive. I offered. Survive. She didn't answer. I pointed to the mural, now finished, across the side of the house. It showed a small girl planting seeds while faceless hands tossed stones behind her back. Above it, painted in gold. Watered by rejection. Rooted in self. They stared at it, speechless. I don't need you to like it, I said. I didn't build this for applause. They left without walking inside. No hugs. No tears. No false promises. Just two shrinking silhouettes in my rearview mirror. And a field of lavender blooming in their place.
Days passed.
Then a week. Silence again, but this time, it wasn't cold. It was earned. And then, without warning, the message came. From my brother. A photo. The family business, the one they gave him, shuttered. Windows boarded. For lease, sign crooked in the dirt. Captioned with one bitter sentence. Hope your little garden's worth more than our legacy. Our legacy. The same legacy that I was told I wasn't good enough to touch. The one I cleaned after school, took inventory for, worked weekends in unpaid. He ran it into the ground. Hired friends. Ignored the books. Refused advice. He didn't build it, so he didn't know how to carry it. And now he was angry that I hadn't crumbled in his shadow. I didn't reply, but I printed the photo, taped it behind my front door. Not out of pettiness, out of memory. A reminder that not all gifts are blessings, and not all exclusions are losses. The next day, I opened the envelope that had been sitting on my desk for months. The deed to my land. Fully paid. No loans. No cosigners. Just me. I signed the back. Stamped the official record. Filed it with the county. Ownership not just of land. Of story. Of self. They gave him walls. They gave me air. He suffocated in his inheritance. I learned how to breathe on my own. And the air was sweeter than anything money ever bought. The story might have ended there, but people like them don't leave loose ends. Mom emailed again. This time with a photo of her and my brother at a charity gala. Dressed to impress. Caption. Still standing. Family always finds its way. No greeting. No context. Just a not-so-subtle reminder that they still had each other. Still standing. I stared at that phrase longer than I should have. Because standing and growing aren't the same thing. And roots, once ignored, don't return to the soil that starved them. So, I posted something of my own. A photo of the greenhouse I'd finished building. My hands covered in soil. A caption that read, "Some of us weren't handed anything, so we built everything we needed. By hand. In silence." The response? Hundreds of shares. Messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. I needed to see this today. You're doing more than growing, you're thriving. I wasn't looking for validation. But for once, I felt seen on my own terms. Later that evening, my neighbor came by with fresh bread. She glanced at the mural and asked, "What inspired it?" I paused, then said, "Family, and what blooms after them." She smiled like she understood, and I think she did, because sometimes family builds your foundation, and sometimes they're just the fire that teaches you how to rebuild. Either way, you grow. Fall rolled in quietly, bringing amber leaves and early dusk. I spent most of my evenings on the porch now, tea in hand, peace in my chest. That's when the letter came. Not an email, not a text, a real, handwritten letter with my name carefully penned on the envelope. It was from Dad. "Emery, I drove past again last week.
I don't think you saw me.
The place looks beautiful. You did more with your piece of land than I ever did with the whole business. I still don't know how to talk to you. I don't know how to undo the way we hurt you. But I wanted to say, I see it now. We got it wrong. I hope you're happy. Dad." There was no manipulation. No ask. Just words. Late, but almost honest. I didn't cry.
I didn't write back.
But I folded the letter and placed it inside the same folder that held the property deed. Not as a keepsake. As a record. Proof that people can change their words, even if they never change their choices. Later that night, I sat under the string lights in my backyard, watching the shadows dance along the mural. My land was quiet, but my heart wasn't empty. Because this, all of it, had taught me that home isn't inherited. It's claimed, built with hands no one believed in, protected by boundaries no one respected, and filled with love that doesn't ask for proof. They may have given my brother the title, but I made something untouchable. Winter came, and with it, silence. Not the kind I feared anymore. The kind I chose. The letter from Dad was the last I ever received. No follow-ups. No visits. No staged family interventions. They had said their piece. And I had heard it. But forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the table that taught you hunger. Instead, I kept growing. Expanded the greenhouse. Started hosting weekend workshops for women in the area. Women like me. Quiet builders. Late bloomers. Daughters who were told to settle for silence. One afternoon, after a class, a woman lingered behind. She said softly, "I know you don't talk much about your past, but did you build this place because of them?" I smiled. Not sad. Not bitter. Just honest. "No," I said. "I built it because of me. They were just the reason I had to start from scratch." She nodded like she understood, maybe too well. Later that night, I stood on the back porch and looked at the mural again. I'd added to it last week, just a small detail. A second figure. Standing beside the girl planting seeds. Not helping her. Not handing her tools. Just watching, letting her bloom on her own. It represented something I hadn't realized I'd found. Witnesses. Not saviors. People who saw me as I was, not as I failed to be. Family, it turns out, isn't always blood. Sometimes, it's the ones who show up after the fire and sit beside the ash without asking you to pretend it never burned. Spring returned like a soft exhale. My lavender fields stretched wider now, buzzing with bees, bending with wind. The greenhouse thrived. And so did I. I received one final delivery in the mail, a legal notice. My brother had defaulted on the business loan. They had used the family home as collateral. It was gone. The empire they gave him had crumbled. The inheritance they thought was legacy had become debt. For a moment, I wondered if I should feel something.
Pity.
Vindication. But all I felt was distance. Like watching the end of a movie you walked out of years ago. A week later, a local magazine asked to feature my land. The lavender, the murals, the workshops. They titled the piece, "From Discarded to Rooted, a woman who built backward and bloomed anyway." I didn't post it.
Didn't send it to them. Didn't need to.
Because my revenge was never meant to be loud. It was always this. Living well. Without them. That weekend, a little girl from the neighborhood brought me a drawing. Stick figures in front of a purple field. One of them had curly hair and muddy gloves. Below it she wrote, "I want to grow up just like you. The kind of lady who makes things stay alive." I hung it beside the mural. Because sometimes, the real legacy isn't in what you're given. It's in what you plant, what you protect, and what grows because you refuse to stay buried. "We're not your bank anymore," Dad snapped, his voice sharp with smugness. He stood there, arms folded, eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Like he'd just delivered the final blow in a silent war I never agreed to fight. Mom didn't say a word. She just sipped her tea, pinky up like royalty, watching me pack my books from the kitchen table as if I were some unwanted guest overstaying her welcome. No warning. No empathy. Just exile. Their final verdict, delivered over burnt toast and orange juice. "You're 23. Grow up. We've done enough. You should thank us for what we already gave." By 10:04 a.m., I was on the sidewalk with my duffel bag, one cracked sandal, and a dead phone battery. But by 4:17 p.m., my phone buzzed, finally charged at a gas station cafe. A message from Jonathan, my family's longtime trust manager. "Hi, Isla, just got their auto transfer request for $15,000 monthly allowances again. Shall I approve like always?" I stared at the screen. Then I smiled. And typed one word. Denied. "My name is Isla Hart, I'm 23. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. What happens when the ones who raised you forget what you're really worth, and you have the power to remind them?"
They thought they shut the door on me.
They didn't realize I had the keys to every other one in the house. And, trust me, I was just getting started. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was heartbroken. Because I was calculating. Their words kept looping in my head like static. "We're not your bank. You owe us gratitude. We sacrificed so much for you. As if my existence had been some endless invoice they were waiting for me to pay. But here's the part they never knew. The trust wasn't theirs. It was mine. My grandfather, Mom's estranged father, had left everything to me after he passed.
Not to them.
Not a single cent. They didn't know that when they were cutting off the bank, they were severing their only lifeline. Jonathan had kept it quiet, per Grandpa's legal instructions. I'd receive full access the moment I turned 23. 3 days ago. So when I typed denied, I wasn't just rejecting their allowance. I was flipping the table they'd been eating from for years. I moved into a small apartment downtown the next morning, leased under my name. No roommates. No chaos. Just me, for walls and quiet power. By Friday, Mom texted, "Isla, darling, your father's heart meds are out of stock at the usual pharmacy. Could you please?" She didn't finish the sentence.
Didn't have to.
They'd grown so used to me funding their every comfort, they forgot I had limits. Or maybe they assumed I didn't. I replied with one line. "Maybe it's time you grow up. You're 52. Then I turned off my phone. That night, I lit a candle. Not for peace, but for memory. I wouldn't forget the silence that followed. The silence of people realizing their ATM just learned how to say no. By Sunday, they were scrambling. My email pinged like a fire alarm, polite desperation, dressed in punctuation. Subject lines read, "Hey, quick question. Family check-in, smiling face with smiling eyes. Just wondering about the mortgage." Mortgage? I nearly laughed. They'd used my trust to refinance their second vacation home. The one with the jacuzzi tub and the live, laugh, love sign nailed to the bathroom wall. Now they wanted my kindness to keep it afloat? I forwarded every email to Jonathan. He knew what to do. No more auto approvals. No more loopholes. No more lies. And then the cherry on top, I found the spreadsheets. Tucked in an old Dropbox folder Jonathan shared, labeled Historical Transactions, Heart Estate. Line after line. $8,700, Mom's spa retreat. $4,200, Dad's business seminar in Vegas. $19,600, furniture upgrade. $2,100, private school donation in Isla's name. I'd never heard of the place. They used me as a human credit card, all while calling me entitled when I asked for basic support in college, all while lecturing me about financial maturity. So I began drafting a letter, not to them, to every extended relative they still tried to impress. Aunt Carol, Uncle Bennett, Cousin Shelby with the lake house. They'd all get a copy. Not vindictive, just factual, just enlightening. Attached? A polite explanation of why Mom and Dad's social invitations might soon be budget conscious, and the ledger of every luxury they'd build to their daughter's future. But I wouldn't send it yet.
No.
Not until they crossed one more line. And trust me, they always do. It happened on a Wednesday. A call from an unknown number. I let it ring out. Seconds later, voicemail. I played it on speaker while brushing my hair. "Hi, Isla. It's Pastor Reynolds. I've been asked to officiate your parents' renewal of vows this Sunday. I heard you're covering the reception costs again. That's very generous." My comb froze mid-stroke. Reception costs? Again? I opened my banking app. Nothing touched. Then I logged into the trust backend. There it was, a pending invoice. $11,500, catering deposit, heart vow renewal.
Approved by Dad.
2 days after his "we're not your bank" speech. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Then I laughed. The kind of laugh that doesn't reach your chest, just lives in your throat like static. He had the audacity to call me entitled, while sliding his old fingers across digital funds that weren't his. Jonathan had flagged the transaction, waiting on my green light. I clicked reject. Then, on impulse, I emailed Pastor Reynolds. "Dear Pastor, there must have been a misunderstanding. I won't be attending the vow renewal, nor am I funding the event. Wishing them a meaningful celebration nonetheless. Regards, Isla Hart." 2 hours later, my phone buzzed. Mom, why would you embarrass us like this? Do you know how this makes us look? Family will talk, Isla. I stared at her words and replied, then give them something worth talking about. I could feel the air shift. Something had cracked, not just in them, but in me. This wasn't rebellion anymore. It was reclamation. Thursday morning brought silence. No texts, no calls, no digital tantrums, just silence, which, from my parents, was its own kind of war drum. I went for a walk, trying to shake off the tension. But halfway through the park, my phone buzzed again. Jonathan. Hey, Isla, just got a notice from the family attorney. Your parents filed a formal request to restructure the trust. They're claiming financial dependence based on parental investment and long-term caregiving. Want me to shut it down? My breath caught. They weren't just asking for money anymore. They were trying to rewrite history, reframe it like they raised me alone. Like they were owed royalties for every diaper, every piano lesson, every sacrifice they ever tallied in their mental spreadsheet. It was laughable, except it wasn't, because this wasn't about money. It was about control, and losing it was making them desperate. I told Jonathan to proceed legally, full audit, statement of distributions, timeline of inheritance access. Paper trails don't lie, but people do. And my parents? They were masters of smiling while cutting you open. I knew their next move would be public. That's how they operated. Shame by spectacle. Manipulation by performance. So, I prepped for the storm. Set my social accounts to private. Downloaded every email thread, every bank receipt,
And printed them.
neatly, chronologically. Because if they wanted to make this a stage, I would build the spotlight myself. And when they stepped into it, they'd have no script, no applause. Only truth. And paper cuts. Sunday arrived. Their vow renewal, the performance of the year. I didn't attend, of course. But I watched the live stream. Yes, they live streamed it. Mom in a champagne-colored gown. Dad in a smug little tuxedo, adjusting his cufflinks like a man who still believed he ran the show. I watched cousins clap, friends post stories, and old family friends comment. Such a beautiful example of commitment. Love always wins. They had no idea the caterer canceled last minute, or that the floral vendor sued for a bounce check, or that the reception venue was locked when the guests arrived.
Because I had cut the pipeline.
They couldn't siphon gold from a well they publicly disowned, but they tried to hide the collapse, grinned through it, sipped sparkling cider like it was champagne, made do, until Monday, until I sent the letter, printed,
Bound. Mailed.
to everyone in that audience. Inside, a calm, respectfully worded statement explaining my withdrawal from family financial entanglements. No bitterness, no drama, just facts, bank statements, screenshots, emails, receipts, and at the end, a personal note. Love doesn't demand repayment. Manipulation does. I've chosen to walk away from both. By Tuesday, the family group chat exploded. Cousin Shelby texted. They said you were unstable. But this is precision. Uncle Bennett called me, just to say, you did the right thing, sweetheart. And then Mom called, 12 times. But I didn't answer.
Not yet.
I was letting the silence teach her what my words never could. Wednesday morning, a knock at my door. I peeked through the peephole. Jonathan. Not in a suit, in jeans and a hoodie. Figured I'd deliver this one in person, he said, handing me a manila envelope.
Inside.
A handwritten letter.
For my father.
Not an apology. Not even close. Just, we're disappointed. We raised you better than this. Money isn't everything, Isla. Family is. You'll regret this when we're gone. Signed, Dad. No love. No warmth. Just guilt disguised as legacy. I folded it once, then again, until the paper formed a perfect square of nothing. I placed it in my drawer not out of sentiment, but as a reminder. Then I looked at Jonathan. Ready? I asked. He nodded. We headed to the office of the estate attorney. I'd requested a meeting to update the trust. A new clause. Effective immediately. If I passed before the age of 40, the funds wouldn't revert to my parents. They'd go to a scholarship for girls from emotionally manipulative homes. A direct rewrite of the narrative. One they couldn't erase. Later that night, I lit another candle. Not for memory this time, but for release. The house I grew up in? It was never a home. It was a bank vault with chandeliers. Now, I had something better. Solitude. Stability. Silence. The kind that doesn't punish, just exists. Mom texted me again at midnight. One day you'll understand what it's like to be a parent. I stared at the screen, then powered off my phone. Because the real inheritance wasn't money. It was freedom. And I wasn't giving it back. The seasons turned. Fall brought gold to the trees and quiet to my soul. I started volunteering at a community legal aid office. Nothing fancy, just listening to people like me. People who had been made to feel expensive for simply existing. One afternoon, I sat across from a girl named Marcy, 18. Tears dried on her cheekbones. My mom says I'm ungrateful, that I ruined her credit. But she used my name to buy a car. I reached into my bag and handed her something. Not cash, not tissues. A document. A blank template of financial boundaries and personal agency. Signed with authority. Labeled, yours. It was the same paper I'd used months ago. The first form I filed when I decided I'd no longer be a vessel for someone else's greed. She looked up. Hope flickered behind her exhaustion. That's when I knew. Revenge doesn't always scream. Sometimes, it whispers in courtrooms, in scholarships, in blank pages handed to someone who thinks their story is already over. I never went back home. I didn't need to. They still host parties. Still pose for photos with names they used to mock me with. But something's different now. The invitation stopped. The emergency calls went silent. And for the first time, they were truly alone. Not because I left, but because I stopped funding the illusion. Justice didn't arrive in the form of vengeance. It arrived wrapped in boundaries, delivered in clarity, and sealed with truth. And as I sat in my tiny apartment that evening, candle lit, tea in hand, I felt it. Not anger, not sorrow, just peace. Earned.